welcome to Half an Hour Hack. I'm Brian Richardson, joined by my colleagues.
I'm Joe Panzarino.
And Matthew Danielsson.
On today's episode, we'll be discussing hackers that did it for reputation or just to say they could. We'll be discussing hackers Kevin Mitnick and Kevin Poulsen and some of their more interesting hacks, what the repercussions of those were, how they got caught, and where they are now. Kevin Mitnick is a bona fide legend in hacking, making headlines long before most mainstream media was even covering hacking. Mitnick's interest in hacking actually started in an interesting and very different area, being magic. At a young age, he had an interest in sleight of hand, especially in Harry Houdini, who he would later pay homage to with his alias of Eric Weiss, which is Houdini's real name. Mitnick was well known for hacking into different systems, especially cell phone companies such as Motorola and Nokia. In his words to Tamara Chung of the Denver Post in 2018, he said he was never doing it. I never, in doing so, wanted to harm anybody. I was just having fun. I was being the magician by breaking the systems and getting the code. That's why I was going after cell phones. That's why I was going after operating systems, to be better at hacking them. He meant no harm and was also doing something good during his hacking on the run. In an article from the same Denver Post, he brings up that he was trying to help his employer at the time, a local law firm, with the security systems, actually setting up one of the first two-factor systems for them. After hacking a researcher by the name of Satamo Shimomura, leading to Satamo helping the FBI find Mitnick. Actually, during this time, Satamo was getting calls essentially taunting him, which were later found out to not be from Mitnick himself. It was another individual who knew about the hacks and decided to kind of poke fun at both individuals to get the war started. So it's kind of funny because one of the most famous hacking lines that came out of this, being "My kung fu is stronger than yours," was coined by that individual. After serving 5 years in prison, Mitnick went on to use his hacking skills for good, starting a cybersecurity advisement agency known as Mitnick Security, then joining the KnowBe4 as its group as its chief hacking officer. He has turned his skills at hacking into a way to see the holes in a security system and then how to patch them out. He's also become a well-known public speaker and uses his knowledge to educate others on how they should be handling cybersecurity. He's been quoted a few times, including in a video from the Motherboard YouTube channel, saying his favorite hack he has ever done was at 17 years old when he hacked McDonald's drive-thru and messed with the customers, telling them they want a free meal for being the 100th customer of the day. And they would drive off not getting their free meal. When the cops would pull up to kind of investigate it, he would yell into the speaker saying, "Get rid of the cocaine," just to try to get them to come in and investigate the store. And even after all this happened, the manager came out to check the speakers, and he scared him by yelling, "What the hell are you doing out here?" just to give him a fright, which he found absolutely hilarious in his personal opinion. So, for opening this up for discussion, what are you guys' thoughts on how he started out hacking, with the whole him starting out interested in magic and seeing hacking as doable magic?
I think it was interesting that he mentions magic, because I think it's like something so innocent turned and almost like snowballed into something so devious, such as hacking. Because I feel like there's a lot of little kids that enjoy magic, and it's the spectacle of it. It's very interesting. But for someone so young to be thinking, "Oh, magic," and then converting that into, "Oh, magic's the same as hacking a system and fooling around with people," like he does with the McDonald's drive-thru speaker. I think it's not sinister, but it's a very interesting origin story.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. I think it's a totally new perspective to hacking that I've never had before. I never thought of it as magic. I never thought someone would do it because it's like doable magic. So I actually find this very interesting personally.
And I think it's also interesting that he picked it up at such a young age, and he's obviously a very intelligent guy.
Yeah.
And from what I'm hearing, it sounds like either way he was going to get into this type of work, I'll say. Um,
Yeah.
so I think honestly he's got the good origin story, but I can only imagine a bad origin story where, he was hacked or something like that, and he starts doing it for other reasons, financial gain, or just to mess around with people. So
Yeah.
I think he definitely has the potential to flip this on its head and be like, I was wronged at a young age, and now I'm gonna like exact my revengeance. But it's nice to hear. It's like, oh, you just like magic, like cool,
He just wanted to see you could do it.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and I could totally understand how he sees it as magic, because a lot of people that don't understand the field, they they can almost see it as magic. Like, oh, how did they
Yeah.
get my credit card number? How did they get all this information? Like, you don't just snap your fingers and you get it. You got to work for it, and it's the same as magic. You can't just, you gotta. It's always sleight of hand, and it's always a lot of like behind the scenes work. So I
Yeah,
think
which is
that's the good
go ahead.
correlation. No, you
Yeah,
can go.
which is something he brings up a lot is that his interest in magic led to a lot of his hacking style, being able to kind of sleight of hand, being finding because a lot of hackers are known to dumpster dive to find old passwords and old IDs to try to get into places they're not supposed to be getting into. So it's an interesting thought when you think about the comparisons with magic, especially with sleight of hand magic to hacking, where it's just switching out what is needed for something because you're distracted by something else.
I'm still
Um,
convinced cheat codes are magic.
I took a cryptology course over the summer, and a lot of it was like they had five computers set up at Oswego, and we had to physically break into them by any means necessary. So I personally sent a DDoS to one of the computers, and I overloaded one of one of the web pages, which I thought was fun. So I do have a little bit of experience in like the
Oh,
hacking world, yeah. Um, but that was a very test environment, and I'm not DDoSing anyone else. But
stay on your good side, I
yeah,
say.
right.
Okay, all right, all right.
But it's very interesting to see just how much work you have to put in for such a simple act, because I feel like a lot of people will look towards like the end product, like, oh, he got into, I don't know. He got into the McDonald's drive-through, and he did all this, and he hacked into these massive securities, and like the police are on him, and he's running away, and and all that stuff. But it's a lot of preparation, and it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of know-how. So you know, all this time and effort, he knows his outcomes. He knows that he's going to be successful if he keeps putting a lot into it, but he also is running the risks of that, the risks
Yeah,
of running into hacking. I think you have a lot of time to think about that, and the fact that he is continuously pumping out these very infamous hacks, and he's good at it, and then they say like, why'd you do this? Like, you had all this time to think about it. Like, is this like an evil thing? And he just says, no, I did it because I wanted to prove I can. Which I think is very truthful, but it's a very hard buy.
yeah.
So
It's kind of like just because you want to see if you can do it, like doesn't make it right, kind of a thing.
exactly.
that actually leads into our next question. Do you think what he was doing was wrong? Why or why not?
This is it's like I want to say it's right. Like I don't want to say it's right, but like it's not like this guy was hacking financial systems and stealing millions and millions of dollars, you know.
Hmm.
So, but either way, like taking something that's not yours and breaking into it, that's just at the face value wrong.
I think he puts it in a way that makes me think it's neutral. Like
Mhm.
he wasn't doing it for any gain, but he wasn't doing it, because he wanted to hurt others. And I think that's a very hard thing to accept, that he just did it because he could and he wanted to.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's I see it as almost like a waste of time and resources on his part. You do all this work, you're dealing with authorities, and you're learning all these hacking codes and everything, and it's just to say, oh, by the way, I did it. I think that's such a difficult buy. Um, and to say if it was wrong, yes, but I think in his eyes, I don't think he saw it like that.
Right.
I just think he saw it as, just as like almost like a hobby that maybe it pays well, maybe it doesn't, and there's only one real way of knowing. So I would
Mhm.
say it's like it's not right, it's not wrong, it's like a true neutral, and that is something so rare that it's almost unheard of.
Yeah.
So one thing that's brought up is he says it was all a prank, but an individual who's investigating on it says that it was more because he says that Mitnick was selling some of the information he got from Motorola specifically to an Israeli citizen, which Mitnick himself has denied ever doing. So do you think it was more, was it all just a prank for him? Because
Well,
he's stated multiple times that had never happened.
if it turns out that that did in fact happen, this is a totally different situation.
100%.
I think that's yeah. I think that flips this whole story on its head.
Yeah.
To be honest.
That's why I wanted to bring it up here is it's very, because he says it's never been a thing, and there is no documented evidence, or at least that this individual has shown that it was a thing. But when this article was released in 2018, before it even went out, Mitnick emailed the individual that was sending it out and said, "I never did this. It was never a thing. It was never about the money."
Interesting.
I
He
think it.
stated. Oh,
Oops,
go ahead.
sorry. I think it's one of those things where people can't accept that he did it for sick kicks, and they have to place it on something.
Oh yeah.
And that's why I personally think, because if he denies it and he's going out of his way and saying, "Hey, like I'm just doing this as because I can and because it's a reputational thing," and someone's thinking, "Oh, that can't be right," and they have to put him on something. So as much as I'm going to play devil's advocate, I don't think he I want to say it was more than just a prank. I think that's a very weak defense. Like, oh, it's just all
Right.
fun and games, because he's putting people's not lives at risk, but he's putting a lot of people's careers and jobs and worries at
Yeah.
risk just so he can get some sort of satisfaction. But to say that he was selling this information, and I don't know if he actually did, and obviously it's still unknown. But for him to email this person directly and go that miracle mile and say, "Hey, listen, I didn't do that. I wasn't selling." I think that's a very hard pill to swallow for people
Yeah.
that are trying to pin him for
Exactly.
all this hacking.
But you know something, like, to totally, sorry to cut you off,
Okay.
but to totally flip the perspective for a second, people have been hacking video games just to see if they could do it, just to see if they could level themselves up and get all the attachments, all the things that they want for different games, and that's just for fun. Like, they're not doing that to make money. They're just trying to prank kids. Like, they're gonna try and like in Call of Duty, they're gonna put God mode on so they never die in the game. It's like, that is just doing it for fun.
Mhm.
Hacking Motorola is a
It's a totally different field.
Well, like that's something interesting that individual that talked about the Israeli citizen thing is he argues that he was doing harm by doing what he did because a lot of
Yeah.
people lost their jobs because of it.
Oh
And
yeah.
Mitnick brings up that is his greatest regret with what he did was
Mhm.
people got hurt out of it. He's like, that was never my intention. He's like, my intention was to prove that this could be done and understand it. So it's kind of an interesting thought.
Was he never seen Spider-Man? With great power comes great responsibility.
I mean,
We
this was
know
back in the
this.
80s. This was back in the 80s.
But isn't that a
so-
comic book quote?
It is a comic book, but it probably wasn't as popular. Comics actually will come up in the next story. What are your thoughts on his capture? Because for me, it seems like just a bit of hubris on his part, even though in the end it ended up not being even him that was taunting this individual.
I would just say in the wake of all his doings, not that it finally caught up to him, but I think he was like, like I'm just stop while you're ahead type of thing. Because he did hack everything. Anything he really, if he set his sight to it, it wasn't really safe from him. And I think you finish the race and, get your reward and get out before it starts getting really bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like, are we at the halfway mark? We are at the halfway mark. Okay, so,
Cool.
Brian, go to the next one for us, please.
Of course. So a lot of the information for the next one comes from the Los Angeles Times article, "The Last Hacker." He called himself Dark Dante. But that was from September 12th, 1993, by Jonathan Littman. Kevin Poulsen, aka Dark Dante, had a rough time growing up. His first adopted mother killed herself while him and his sister were at a neighbor's plane. His adopted father and his new stepmother were kind of your average small town couple of the times back in the 80s, not understanding the technology that Poulsen was interested in. Poulsen was awkward around people when in their physical presence, but when it came to speaking over the phone or online, it was really easy for him. He would go to phone chat parties, which was where individuals meet on party chats from phone lines, would go meet up in person. So obviously for us millennials and Gen Z, this is a weird concept to think about getting on a phone line that a bunch of other people are on and talking. I don't think that's something we can even fathom. So it's a weird concept that kind of takes this story very much out of our time. But this is where Poulsen actually began getting involved in hacking because a lot of the individuals at these events were known as phone freaks, individuals who would get into phone systems similar to how hackers do with computers. So Poulsen began hacking different networks such as the Advanced Research Projects Agency network. After a few years of doing this, he noticed another hacker seemed to be following in his forays, a man named Ronald Austin. Poulsen began to see it as a test of skill, and the two of them began to virtually joust of sorts within the system, leaving different messages within it for the other to try and find. Then they decided to work together, breaking into several companies, universities, and even the Naval Research Lab. The fun would soon come to an end, though, as Austin would be arrested and serve 2 months in jail for these interactions, while Poulsen would only have his computer taken away as he was 17 and couldn't be brought onto criminal charges at the time. So he kind of essentially got away with murder while his partner in crime got arrested. After this, he went to actually work for one of the organizations that he had hacked, the Stanford Research Institute, where he helped teach the military how to safeguard their information from outsiders. He was given a security clearance without a second thought and taught the latest encoding algorithms and devices for security. Of course, old habits die hard. In 1988, a storage unit was opened up and filled with locksmith tools, blank false IDs, and photos of Poulsen picking the lock to a telephone company and him sitting at the computer in the truck smiling. After being interrogated by police, he knew he had to take them to his home where they found more incriminating evidence. Poulsen knew he was in trouble, so once again, he went on the run. He spent 2 years on the run, messing with his pursuers, going as far as to taunt them for letting him escape. In 1990, they aired an episode of Unsolved Mysteries focusing on him. After the episode aired, their workers were ready for any tips on him, but just as their phones rang, they went dead. This seemed to point in his direction, as he had even wiretapped Pacific Bell security personnel when they were trying to track him back in 1987, so that he could keep a step ahead of them. He was finally caught in April 1991 after a purchase tipped off the FBI at a night market in LA. They decided to bring Poulsen's picture and the night manager recognized him. He evaded the FBI one more time at the night market before he was finally caught the next night at the store. He tried to guilt them by crying, saying he needed his glasses because he had to take out his contacts. But when he went to his car, they decided to search his bag prior to letting him get his glasses and found a set of handcuff keys in his glasses case. meaning he was trying one more time to just get away. In the car, they also found a variety of tools and gadgets that he had been using for his hacking. After serving his time in prison, Polson went on to become an investigative journalist, even going as far as releasing information on sex offenders on MySpace in 2006, leading to the arrest of one of them. So, with this story, what are your thoughts on his origin story? Because you guys actually brought up something in the last story about a very tragic past. This is what Polson had.
Yeah.
I was just about to add to that. Talking about the earlier topics, he does have that dark history, and it's like, oh, that makes sense, because hackers are not portrayed as, usually the good guys.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the dark past really fits, and what really kicks it off for me is that he's got like his fake name, Dark Dante, and I feel
Yeah.
like if you nickname yourself, you're really not trying to be, you're covering up your real name, and it's corny, I'll say
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think it's for good intentions. Like, there's no superhero with the name of Dark Dante.
Right.
So I think this totally makes sense along his journey, that his origins were so bitter, and then later on he's not the most productive member of society.
Well, it's interesting you bring up comic books because actually, when the police went into his home to investigate and found all the other evidence, along with everything else, they found comics of the Watchmen.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
that makes
Yep.
that makes a lot of sense.
And later on, he ended up using the aliases of Rorschach to kind of be that individual for a while. So a lot of people really found that interesting, and that's what intrigued me about him, and why when you guys brought up comic books and Spider-Man before, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
they're gonna get a kick out of the foreshadowing.
Yeah. Wow.
That leads
Rorschach's
into this.
journal, baby. Rorschach's journal.
I think I mean, that's like, it's not the perfect origin story, but it's damn near close.
Yeah.
Um, that is
So do you
Plot
think?
twist ending, though, if I must
yeah.
say.
Yeah. So what he was doing, because it's never been confirmed why he did a lot of this. He's never confirmed it, unlike Mitnick, who we brought up before, whether it was for financial gain or anything. But he did get a lot of very confidential information and had it on file, including Soviet wiretapping, FBI businesses, and such. He had a lot of very sensitive information.
Right.
Do you think what he was doing was wrong? Why or why not? Because he used a similar excuse to what Snowden used, as information wants to be free, is what he was quoted saying exactly, which is, that's a bit far for the information he had.
Definitely. Just to, like, a quick little personal opinion, I kind of believe that, with like government files and like these super top secret classified files and information, like, oftentimes they're that classified because the general public can't really handle what's in that folder. So I think for that to just get, brushed over and just like, oh, well, I have it, like, that could just be very dangerous for this, like, for the stability of our society. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because they don't know what he's gonna do with it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he's just like, oh, I just want it. It's like, oh, you can't just have it.
It also, I feel like just having it in general just is so unsettling for some people,
Yeah, I mean, the information's classified for, like, good reasons.
Exactly. Exactly.
And a lot of it was undercover businesses that the FBI was using as fronts.
Yeah.
So like, that's very dangerous. Like, should at the time our enemies get a hold of that, easily could take them out.
Yeah.
And obviously it was a security issue at that point. Do you think he crossed the line between doing it to find information and espionage? Because that was his lawyer's defense when he went to court, it was not espionage because he never sold it.
I feel like on paper that's a very good defense on his lawyer's behalf, but honestly, it sounds like he just did it not because he didn't know any better. It's because he was finally good at something and he can do it. And I think because of his origin story and like where his like actions were leading, He didn't really know any better. So he was, he's good at this one thing. He doesn't necessarily see it as evil, and he's just gonna keep pursuing that. And I think that wouldn't really hold up in court, being like, well, he had nothing better to do,
It's one of those things, like, if you don't know the ending, you just automatically assume the guy's doing it for evil.
Exactly.
Because,
exactly.
I mean, he's releasing information on sex offenders on MySpace in 2006. He's an investigative journalist. Like, he's doing good for society at the end of it all.
But it
However,
raises. Oh, keep going.
No, you can go.
I was gonna say, but it raises the question of, like, is that like a retribution almost? He knows he's in the hole. He's got to start climbing out. Or do you think that this was just his plan all along to not be evil and just keep going, and just do these heroic acts?
It's a good question, but like, I've seen Live PD, Cops, like all those shows, and when they have a drug bust and the people swear they're not trying to sell it, if they have enough of it, they have intent to sell.
Exactly.
And it's like, when you have all of this top secret classified information, like, dude, you're not just curious. Like, there's something up here.
Yeah, like, where does your curiosity stop and your financial gain begin?
Yeah.
Which is actually something they bring up in that article at the end, is they try to question his motives, because he's never given it. Was it for financial gain? Was it just to keep his reputation because he was considered one of the greatest hackers for a long time? Or was it something more from a mental standpoint? Was it him kind of trying to make up for his past, being a no one, being alone all the time?
Yeah.
Was that what it came down to? Actually, in the end, when he was on trial, his old friend Ronald Austin actually sold him out the same way Poulsen had sold him out before, when he was 17 and got away with the crime. Austin decided when he was on trial that he was going to lessen his own issues. He sold out Poulsen to. So it's an interesting turn of events that ended up happening on him, that all his friends, he ended up alone anyways. What are your thoughts on, because he had multiple close calls with the authorities and his eventual capture?
I think his close calls make him out to be like a very suspect person.
Yeah.
The fact that he's constantly trying to get away, he's dodging, he's almost, he's taunting them and everything. It doesn't really paint a good image for him, but I genuinely think he's just like a loner and he doesn't really know much better, and he's getting a sense of satisfaction from his hacking, and I think he's also being kind of a jerk, taunting them. I think that's a little too much after, 2 years on the run, he's messing with pursuers, and he taunts them no less. I don't think that paints a very good image for him, especially when he's in court and he's saying, no, it's just, it's just because I was curious. It's like, curiosity doesn't go that far. And I think his eventual capture was honestly well-deserved. I mean, even to the last fleeting moment, he's still trying to escape, which I think is very telling of the type of actions he's doing, the type of person that he is. But I think overall, besides the taunting, his close calls and capture were very out of panic and anxiety, just because he doesn't know any better.
Yeah.
I think him being a creature of habit is what ended up selling him out, is because he visited the same market 3 nights in a row.
Yeah.
So the FBI, after the first purchase, and they got that ping for the purchase, they went and they interviewed some of the individuals, especially the night manager, and he recognized him. So the next night when Poulsen came in, he called the FBI, but they didn't make it in time. So they just missed out on him. So the next night, they're like, you know what, we're staking this place out. And actually, the FBI didn't even get their hands on him first. 2 of the night market employees tackled him to the ground until the FBI could get in there, so he couldn't get away.
It's like, that almost makes me feel like he wasn't doing anything wrong, Because, like, if he's brilliant enough to get all this classified information, then I think he would be like wise enough to not go to the same store 3 times and know that people are looking for him.
But I would also say, do you think that he's not socially awkward, but socially anxious, where behind a computer, he's the smartest man alive, but you meet him in person, and you're like, yeah, this guy's whack, you know?
Yeah.
That's why I brought up at the beginning is he wasn't exactly comfortable in person because there was a girl he had met through the party lines that had said that they were not comfortable talking in person, though they had spent hours talking about anything from Dungeons and Dragons to Lord of the Rings, but when they met in person, he was a completely different person. He wasn't a charismatic individual like he seemed to be over the phone and online. So it's very plausible that he is a creature of habit, that it got into his head that this is what I do, I have to keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be his social anxiety causing that.
Yeah.
And
oops, sorry.
so with the last thing is, do you think he's made up for what he did? Because the leaking of information for sex offenders on MySpace, plus he also had broke the story of Chelsea Manning during the WikiLeaks information. Do you think he's made up for his past? Do you think he can even do it? Because he's done a lot. A lot of the information he got was very personal and caused a lot of issues for people.
I like to say he redeemed himself. I mean, he served his time, and now he's using his powers for good. I feel like I'm talking about a supervillain. But you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, hackers kind of are like real life superheroes in some ways when you think about it. 'Cause they're doing things a lot of normal people can't.
Yeah.
I don't. He said it made up for his past. I would say no. I don't think one good deed makes up for, no matter, unless this deed is absolutely monumental and like saved America.
Hey, who
I
knows?
don't. Yeah, you never know. That is true. But I don't think he made up for it. I think his good acts are almost, to show that he isn't evil, not to show that he is good. It's just to show that he isn't doing this for sick kicks or anything. And, although, the sex offenders on MySpace capture 2006, that's great, but I don't think that makes up for the absolute trailblazing chaos that he could have, that he did cause up until that point.
And I agree with you on all that, because I don't think he's done what he can do. Because unlike Mitnick, who has kind of changed his life completely around to stop what he did previously, I think could be more what Poulsen heads toward, but he's more using the same powers he had before, but in a less evil way because of his journalism. So he's releasing information that wouldn't normally get released. Which, yet again, you bring up that whole neutral thing, and as I said before, he was a big D&D player, so bring up the fact of true neutral. A lot of the hackers that we talked about today kind of fall under that category where they're not evil, they're not good, they're kind of a neutral, at least the ones we've talked about today.
Yeah.
Future episodes, they might not be so nice.
Might not be so clear cut.
So thank you guys for joining us, and we hope to see you in the next episode.